Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another session with Enlightening India. Today, we'll be reading the eighth chapter of the book, Five Go to Smuggler's Stop. Before we get into it, let me quickly remember what happened in the last chapter. So, Timmy and the kids had taken a tunnel down from Maribel's room. So, the secret passage started from Maribel's room. They had to remove a lot of furniture and the carpet to get to the entrance of this passage, and then they got into it, and somewhere they were traveling inside the hill on which Smuggler Stop stands, and they went into the hill. They went into a dark passage, and they were supposedly supposed to come out straight in the market area. So let's see what happens. Okay, why are they doing so much effort? Why are they putting in so much effort and not just using the main door? Because they cannot take Timmy through outside the main door, because Timmy is not welcome in Smuggler Stop because of Pierre Lenore. Okay, so they're taking this slightly, maybe a dark, maybe a risky path. We don't know. Let's see. Chapter 8, An Exciting Walk. The tunnel ran slightly downwards and smelt nasty in places. Sometimes it opened out into pits like the one that they themselves had come from. Sooty flashed his torch up them. That one goes into Barling's house somewhere, he said. Most of the old house hereabouts have openings into pits like ours. Jolly well hidden, some of them are too. There's daylight or something in front, said Anne suddenly. Oh God, I hate this tunnel. Sure enough, it was daylight, creeping in through a kind of cave entrance in the hillside. So the children had dropped down. No, they hadn't dropped down. They had climbed down that rope ladder, and they got into a pit, and then they started walking where Sooty was leading them to. Okay, so it was a dark tunnel, a dark cave, a dark tunnel. And as they were walking, there were other tunnels going here and there. And Sooty was telling them where each one was going. So he pointed to one and he told them that this one goes to Mr. Barling's house. You guys remember who Mr. Barling is, right? Yes, the smuggler that Sooty believes is the smuggler. The person who Sooty believes is the smuggler. So with all that said, then finally they see a bit of daylight in the front. It's more like a cave entrance. Now that they're in the passage, it has to open up somewhere, right? So they are about to reach the end of this dark passage, and from there they can see sunlight coming inside. The children crowded there and looked out. They were outside the hill and outside the town, somewhere on the steep cliff side that ran down to the marsh. So they are there, they have traveled that long passage and they have come towards the hill end. So they have traveled inside the hill in a tunnel and they are almost out. Okay. So they have almost reached their goal. They are outside the hill and near the town. Let's see. Sooty climbed out onto a ledge. So a ledge is basically something that is slightly above the normal ground. He put his torch into his pocket. We have got to get to that path down there, he said, pointing. That will lead us to a place where the city wall is fairly low and we can climb over it. Okay, so they have, wherever the cave has taken them out, from there they need to climb a wall to get to the market area. Is Timmy sure-footed? We don't want him tumbling into the marsh down there. So sure-footed means, is he is he a confident walker? He won't fall down, right? He won't lose his balance because there's the marsh everywhere where they're going. So they don't want Timmy or anyone for that matter to fall down. The marsh lay a good way below, looking ugly and flat. George sincerely hoped Timmy would never fall into it. Still, he was very sure-footed, and she didn't think he would slip. The path was steep and rocky, but quite passable. They all went down it, clambering over rocks now and again. The path led them to a city wall, which, as Sooty had said, was fairly low just there. He climbed up to the top. He was like a cat for climbing. No wonder he's got such a name for climbing about everywhere at school, said Dick to Julian. So they had reached that wall after getting out of the cave, and everybody had to climb to reach the other side, the market area. And before this, when Sooty climbed the wall, he was very swift. He had just went on and climbed it with such ease that everybody really admired his climbing skills. Dick said, he has had good practice here. Do you remember how he climbed up the roof of the school the term before last? Everyone was scared he would slip and fall, but he did not. He tied the school flag to one of the chimney pots. Come on, called Sooty. The coast is clear. This is a lonely bit of town, and no one will see us climbing up. So while they were climbing, Dick or Julian tells everyone one something that Sooty had done in school last time. Since he had had so much practice climbing rocks here in his house, he had done a very funny thing in school. He had climbed the school walls and tied a school flag up at the very top. Everybody was scared that he would fall, but he did not, of course. Soon, after a lot of climbing, all of them were over the wall, Timmy too. They set off for a good walk, swinging down the hill, enjoying themselves. The mist began to clear after a while, and the sun felt nice and warm. The town was very old. Some of the houses seemed almost tumbled down. So tumble down is broken. They would any at any moment just break. But there were people living in them. For smoke came from the chimneys. So they looked very old houses, but we know people were living inside those houses. How do we know that? Every house had a chimney, and there was smoke coming out from the chimney, and that only comes when a person is cooking, right? Yes. The shops were quaint. Quaint means old-fashioned, with their long, narrow windows and overhanging eaves. The children stopped to look into them, into the shops. Look out! Here's Block, said Sooty, suddenly in a low voice. Don't take any notice of Timmy at all. If he comes around looking or jumping, pretend to try and drive him off as if he was a stray. So as they were walking in the hill, suddenly Block came. Block, the helper in Sooty's house, and they don't want anyone to know that Timmy is with them, right? So Sooty tells everyone, pretend as if Timmy is a dog, a stray dog, and don't take any notice of him. That way, Block won't get to know. They all pretended not to see Block, but gazed earnestly into the window of a shop. Timmy, feeling rather left out, ran up to George and pawed at her, trying to make her take notice of him. Go away, dog, said Sooty, and flapped at the surprised Timmy. Go away, following us about like this. Go home, can't you? Timmy thought that this was some sort of a game. He barked happily and ran around Sooty and George, giving them an occasional lick. Home, dog, home, yelled Sooty, flapping hard again. So everybody's trying to ignore Timmy so that dog does not get to know that it's George's dog. Then Block came up to them, no expression on his face at all. Does this dog bother you? He asked. I will throw a stone at him and make him go. Don't you dare, said George immediately. You go home yourself. I don't mind the dog following us. He's quite a nice one. Block's deaf, silly, said Sooty. It's no good talking to him. So obviously, George said that he will drive away the dog and he will throw a stone. That's not a very nice thing to do, right? You should care for all animals and everyone, in fact, every person, animal, everyone. So George suddenly tells him, hey, don't you throw a stone, okay? Because it's not that it's George's dog, that's why she's saying it. Because it's in general the thing that you all of us should do. But Block was deaf, so he did not hear George. To George's horror, Block picked up a big stone, meaning to throw it at Timmy. George flew at him, punched him hard on the arm, and made him drop the stone. How dare you throw stones at a dog? Yelled the little girl in a fury. Fury means anger. I will tell the police. Now, said a voice nearby. What's all this about, Pierre? What's the trouble? The children turned and saw a tall man standing near them, wearing his hair rather long. He had long, narrow eyes, a long nose, and a long chin. So, with all this, George got very angry, and George punched that man's arm who was trying to throw a stone at the dog. And during this time, somebody came around. a tall man, okay, from the description of things, and he asks Pierre, what's happening here? Why are you all making so much noise? What's the trouble? Oh, Mr. Barling, I didn't see you, said Sooty politely. Nothing's the matter, thank you. It's only that this dog is following us, and Block said he would make it go away by chucking a stone at it. And George here is fond of dogs and got angry about that. Ah, I see. And who are all these children? Asked Mr. Barling, looking at each one of them out of his long, narrow eyes. They have come to stay with us because their uncle's house had an accident to it, explained Sooty. George's father house, I mean. Ah, at Kirin, said Mr. Barling, and seemed to prick up his long ears. So the tall person that had come from behind the children was Mr. Barling. So Pierre talks to him because he lives in that same neighborhood, so he obviously knows Mr. Barling. He does not like him a lot, but he talks to him and he tells them that George really likes dogs and just a small fight. Okay, so just the basics. Surely that is where that very clever scientist friend of Mr. Lenore lives. Yes, he's my father, said George. So now Mr. Barling is asking questions regarding Uncle Quentin. This seems fishy, right? This seems mysterious. Let's see. So George asks Mr. Barling, do you know him? Do you know my father? Mr. Barling says, I've heard of him and of his very interesting experiments. Mr. Lenore knows him well, I believe. Not awfully well, said George, puzzled. They just write to one another. I think my father telephoned to Mr. Lenore to ask him if we could have us to stay while our own house is being mended. So, some basic conversation between George and Mr. Barling. She tells her that we don't know Mr. Lenore a lot, but he helped Uncle Quentin by allowing us to stay here. And Mr. Lenore, of course, was only too delighted to have the whole company of you, said Mr. Barling. Such a good, generous fellow, your father, Pierre. The children stared at Mr. Barling, thinking that it was strange of him to say nice things in such a nasty voice. They felt uncomfortable. So there was something off about Mr. Barling. He seemed to be talking good things, but he had a evil thing going on for him, evil vibes coming from him. So the children felt uncomfortable. It was plain that Mr. Barling did not like Mr. Lenore at all. Well, neither did they, but they didn't like Mr. Barling any better. Timmy saw another dog and darted happily after him. Block had now disappeared, going up the steep high street with his basket. So Block had probably come to get some house goods, okay? Some maybe vegetables or something. And Timmy saw another dog and went after him. So as you see on streets, when you see dogs, if there is another dog come up, the other probably run to him, maybe to play. So things like that. So Timmy saw another dog and went after him. The children said goodbye to Mr. Barling, not wanting to talk to him anymore. They went after Timmy, talking eagerly as soon as they had left Mr. Barling behind. Goodness, that was a narrow escape from Block, said Julian. Old beast, going to throw that enormous stone at Timmy. No wonder you flew at him, George. But you very nearly gave the game away, though. I don't care, said George. I wasn't going to have Timmy's leg broken. It was a bit of bad luck meeting Block, our very first meeting out. We'll probably never meet him again when we take Timmy out, said Sooty comfortingly. So this was a chance, right? They had come out on a day when Block had come out for shopping. Just a chance that they met him. And if we meet him again, we'll simply say that the dog always joins us when it meets us. True, right? Which is perfectly true. They enjoyed their walk. They went into a quaint old coffee shop and had steaming cups of delicious creamy coffee and jammy buns. Timmy had two of the buns and gobbled them greedily. So the children went to a old coffee shop after they had had their walk, just to have some coffee and a few buns. After all this was done, they went back the same way as they had come. They made their way up the steep cliff path and in at the tunnel entrance, back through the winding tunnel to the pit. So now they were going back through the cave that they had left. They are going back inside. They will go back to that passage and they will then again go back to Maribel's room because again they can't go through the main gate. They can't have Timmy being seen in the house. So after they had went to the pit, dark pit that traveled the whole passage, there was the rope ladder waiting for them. Julian and Dick went up first, while George packed the surprised Timmy into the basket again and tied the rope firmly. Firmly means properly around it. Firmly means with strength, properly, right? You tie a knot firmly and then it's tight. So, like that. Then up went the whining Timmy, bumping against the sides of the hole. So, they reach the tunnel that they have to now climb up, right? They need to use the rope ladder. So, Dick and Julian go first, and then Timmy sent in the basket. The two panting boys pulled the basket into Maribel's room and undid it. It was 10 minutes before the dinner hour, just time to shut the trapdoor, pull back the carpet, and wash our hands, said Sooty. So now that they were home back, it was dinner time, right? You need to have your meals at proper time, whatever it be in your house. So dinner was about to be served and they were just in time for it. Sooty says, I will put old Timmy back into the secret passage behind the cupboard in my room. George, where is that meat you bought? I will put that in the passage too. He can eat it whenever he likes. Did you put him a nice warm rug there and a dish of fresh water? Asked George anxiously for the third or the fourth time. You know I did. I keep telling you, said Sooty. So the children would go and have dinner in the dining room downstairs, and Timmy again would have to be kept in the very big cupboard that Sooty had. He would give him food, water, everything there, and a comfortable bed also. Look, we won't put back all the furniture except the chairs. We can say we want it left back because we like to play a game on the carpet. It will be an awful bore if we have to move chests and things every time we exercise them. They were just in time for their dinner. So they decided that they would not move the furniture back on the carpet because then they will have to remove the furniture every time, right? And just to exercise them, just to go out for a walk, they would have to do it every time. Not something that you would want to do, right? Yes. And they said they decided that if anybody asked them on why the furniture was besides the wall and not at its correct place, they could just say that they were playing a game on the carpet. Maybe they could be playing a Uno or a Ludo game. They could say anything. That we use this area to play games. We sit around in a circle, and we need that area. Block was there to serve dinner, and so was Sarah. The children sat down hungrily, in spite of having had coffee and buns. Block and Sarah ladled out hot soup onto their plates. So that is dinner beginning. It's starting with soup for the famous five today. I hope you got rid of that unpleasant dog, said Block in his monotonous voice. He gave George a rather nasty look. Evidently, he had not forgotten how she had flown at him. Sooty nodded. It was no good speaking in answer, for Block could not hear. Sarah bustled around, taking away the soup plates and preparing to give them their second course. The food was very good at Smuggler's Stop. There was plenty of it, and the hungry visitors and Sooty ate everything put before them. So dinner is going good. After soup, there's probably the main course coming, and it's nice. So they're telling that the food is tasty at Smuggler's Stop. Maribel hadn't much appetite. So appetite means the level of how hungry you are. Okay, when you have a larger appetite, that's when you can eat a lot of food. Maybe you don't have such a big appetite, you eat a lot less food. Maribel didn't have much appetite, but she was the only one. Everybody else was very hungry. George tried to secrete dead bones whenever she could for Timmy. 2 or 3 days went by, and the children fell into their new life quite happily. Timmy was taken out each morning for a long walk. The children soon got used to climbing down the rope ladder and making their way with Timmy to the cliffside. In the afternoons, they went to either Sooty or Maribel's room and played games or read. They could have Timmy there because the buzzer always warned them if anyone was coming. So the children have got into the this flow of life every day. This was their daily schedule that they would get down the passage, take Timmy for a walk because the dog needs his exercise, right? Yes. So this has become a daily thing, and they had become very comfortable doing this also, and things were going good. At night, it was always an excitement to get Timmy to George's room without being seen. This was usually done when Mr. and Mrs. Lenore were sitting at their dinner and Block and Sarah were serving them. The children had a light supper first, and Mr. and Mrs. Lenore had their dinner an hour later. Okay, so this is different. So the children were maybe served at say 9 o'clock in the night, and the Mr. and Mrs. Lenore had their dinner at 10. Okay, so during that time when Mr. and Mrs. Lenore were eating, that is the time that they moved Timmy from Sooty's cupboard to George's room. It was the best time to smuggle Timmy along to George's room. Timmy seemed to enjoy the smuggling. He ran silently beside George and Sooty, stopped at every corner, and scampered gladly into George's room as soon as he got there. So George's room was slightly away. The girls' room, Anne and George's room, was slightly away from Maribel and Sooty's room, and they had to carefully take Timmy from here to there. He lay quietly under the bed till George was in bed herself, and then he came out to lie on her feet. So Timmy and George and everyone slept this way. George always locked their door at night. She didn't want Sarah or Mrs. Lenore coming in and finding Timmy there. But nobody came, and as night after night went by, George grew more at ease about Timmy. So this had become routine for them, and slowly and gradually, uh, everybody was easing into this that we have to do this daily. They were getting more comfortable with this. Taking him back to Sooty's room in the morning was a bit of a nuisance, was a bit irritating. It wasn't something that the children liked because it had to be done early before anyone was up. So obviously, right, taking Timmy back had to be done in the morning hours, and then you have to wake up early to just move Timmy from one to another. Slightly irritating, right? Yes. But George could always wake herself at any time she chose. And each morning, about 6:30, so 6:15 a.m., the little girl slipped through the house with Timmy. She went in at Sooty's door, and he jumped out of bed to deal with Timmy. He was always awakened by the buzzer that sounded when George opened the door at the end of the passage. I hope you are all enjoying yourself, Mr. Lenore said to the children whenever they met him in the hall or on the stairs. So George's daily schedule is also here. She takes Timmy back to Sooty's room every morning. And then later during the day, Mr. Lenore asks the children, I hope you're all enjoying yourselves, right? And they always replied politely, Oh, yes, Mr. Lenore, thank you. It's quite a peaceful day, peace and a holiday after all, said Julian. Nothing happens at all. And then things did began to happen. And once they had begun, they never stopped. So this is getting us into this whole mode. So this passage, this is the end of chapter 8. This story now ends on a very cliffhangery note, right? Uh, it says that Julian tells Mr. Lenore that it's a peaceful holiday and nothing generally happens here. We are just enjoying our time. There's no mystery, there's no adventure, there is nothing happening here. And then suddenly things do start to happen. So this is an exciting point for us. Probably from the next 1 2 chapters, something is going to start happening. Some mystery is going to pop up. Thank you for joining in for this session. Looking forward to meet all of you in the next one. Thank you.